The UFC has seen its share of wars inside the octagon, but none have hit harder than this. When Jon Jones, the man many call the greatest fighter of all time, exposed the truth about the UFC's power games, Dana White snapped. The unshakable boss of the world's biggest fight promotion lost his cool on live camera, his trust shattered, his pride wounded, his empire questioned. What followed wasn't just a feud, it was a full-blown civil war between the UFC's king and its greatest warrior. Behind the cameras, behind the statements, and behind the PR spin lies a truth that's far darker, a story of loyalty, betrayal, and business gone personal. This is the real reason Dana White exploded after Jon Jones spoke out. It began during what many believed was the golden age of the UFC. The sport was dominating global headlines, arenas were packed to capacity, and pay-per-view numbers were soaring. At the center of it all stood Jon Jones, the face of dominance, controversy, and brilliance. Dana White often referred to him as the most gifted fighter in UFC history, a once-in-a-generation athlete who could single-handedly carry a card. But behind the praise and money, their relationship had started to fracture. Negotiations for Jones's next superfight were dragging into chaos. His demands were enormous, tens of millions in guaranteed money and a share of revenue that even the UFC's biggest stars had never secured. Dana saw the demand as excessive. Jones saw it as overdue. What began as business soon turned into a personal standoff. As talks collapsed, Jones hinted that he felt unappreciated by the very organization he helped build. He believed the UFC had made billions from his blood and legacy while denying him what he truly deserved. His frustration leaked into social media, sparking rumors of retirement and tension within UFC headquarters. Dana, known for controlling every narrative around the sport, appeared visibly frustrated in press conferences. Jones, on the other hand, carried himself like a king wronged by his own court. He projected confidence, but beneath the surface, his words carried bitterness. He felt used, misunderstood, and alienated from the sport he had once ruled. Fans quickly took sides, turning the feud into a cultural event. Some accused Jones of arrogance and greed, others saw him as a fighter finally standing up to corporate power. Every media appearance from either man added fuel to the fire. Dana, who had once built Jones's image brick by brick, was now dismantling it piece by piece. The UFC's marketing quietly began to shift focus toward new stars, fighters like Tom Aspinall and Alex Pereira, who could carry the future without the baggage of Jones's controversy. The announcement came without warning. During a high-profile UFC event in Baku, Dana White stepped to the podium and stunned the world by revealing that Jon Jones had officially retired from mixed martial arts. It was a moment of silence across the arena, disbelief that the greatest fighter of his generation was done, not because of defeat in the octagon, but because of the politics beyond it. The news rippled through the fight world instantly. Analysts tried to make sense of it. Some believed Jones was bluffing, using retirement as leverage for better terms. Others sensed exhaustion, a man tired of fighting battles outside the cage. Behind the cameras, Dana White's demeanor told the real story. He wasn't celebrating. He looked weary, drained from years of defending and negotiating around a man who had caused both fortune and frustration. Privately, those close to him said it felt like a loss of family. For over a decade, Jon Jones had been the UFC's crown jewel, the athlete who brought prestige to the brand. Now, he was gone, leaving behind questions, regrets, and a power vacuum. For fans, the announcement felt like a betrayal of destiny. The dream matchups they'd waited for vanished overnight. The heavyweight division, once alive with promise, suddenly felt hollow. The greatest of all time had walked away, not defeated, but disillusioned. In truth, Jones's retirement wasn't about leaving fighting. It was about reclaiming control. He was making a statement that even the most powerful organization in the sport could not dictate the legacy of Jon Jones. Only weeks later, the UFC announced its most ambitious event in history, a global showcase hosted at the White House to celebrate the sport's worldwide impact. The spectacle was meant to unite champions past and present under one flag of recognition. But when the lineup was revealed, one name was missing: Jon Jones. The omission was glaring. For years, Jones had been the fighter most closely associated with the rise of MMA in America. His absence wasn't an oversight, it was a message. Dana White had made his decision clear: Jones was no longer part of the UFC's vision. The exclusion hit Jon hard. It was more than professional rejection, it was personal exile. The organization he once carried had now erased him from its proudest moment. The man once celebrated as the sports face was now being quietly airbrushed out of its history. As preparations for the event continued, the UFC's silence spoke louder than any statement. Behind the cameras, staff members described Dana's demeanor as cold, calculated, and final. The line had been drawn, Jones was on the outside, and the message was clear: the era of tolerance was over. The rift that had begun as a negotiation was now a scar carved into the identity of the UFC itself. By August, the feud had reached its most public stage yet. During media rounds for a major UFC event, Dana White made a dismissive remark that reverberated across the entire sports world. He made it clear that the chances of Jon Jones ever returning to the organization were almost non-existent. It was an emotional outburst disguised as business talk, and it immediately became a viral moment. Across social media, fans turned the remark into a cultural meme. Comment sections exploded with debate, and journalists dissected every word, interpreting it as Dana's final act of defiance. Some saw it as proof that the relationship was beyond repair. Others viewed it as Dana's way of protecting his pride after years of defending a fighter who repeatedly embarrassed him. The UFC president's frustration was understandable. For over a decade, he had navigated scandals, arrests, and failed negotiations, always giving Jones another chance. But every time he did, something went wrong. Now, he had finally decided to reclaim the narrative, even if it meant publicly cutting ties with the greatest fighter he had ever promoted. Jon Jones, meanwhile, stayed silent for once. There were no statements, no responses, just a void filled with speculation. But his silence carried weight. Fans began to believe he was planning something, a move beyond the UFC, perhaps a rival promotion or a one-time super fight elsewhere. For Dana, it didn't matter. He had drawn his final line. The UFC would move forward without its most iconic champion. And in that decision, the fight world saw something deeper, not the end of a contract, but the collapse of a brotherhood built on ambition, ego, and betrayal. As summer faded, the story took a quiet turn. After months of silence and escalating tension, Jon Jones reached out to Dana White privately. It wasn't a public gesture or a press stunt, it was direct, humble, and human. For years, their relationship had been built on power and pride, not vulnerability. But now, Jones was extending a hand to the men who once shaped his career. Behind the scenes, UFC insiders described Dana as conflicted. He respected the gesture but couldn't forget the chaos, the broken promises, and the moments that cost the organization millions. The apology stirred old emotions but didn't erase old wounds. Dana had built the UFC on reliability, and Jones, no matter how great, had become unpredictable. Still, the apology marked a shift in tone. For the first time in years, Jones wasn't acting like the defiant champion. He was showing the side of himself that rarely appeared, the men who wanted peace more than power. But the silence that followed was telling. Dana didn't respond publicly. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken louder than words. The world saw the moment as bittersweet, two men standing on opposite sides of success, unable to bridge the gap between them. What once felt like a brotherhood had turned into distant respect, frozen in time. As the weeks passed, the MMA world refused to let the story die. Fans, fighters, and even former champions began pushing for reconciliation. Social media campaigns demanded that Jon Jones be reinstated for the White House card. Industry analysts speculated that if Jones returned, the UFC could break its all-time pay-per-view record. The pressure on Dana White was mounting fast. Inside UFC headquarters, the debate was intense. Business executives argued that bringing Jones back would be profitable. Public relations staff warned that forgiving him could make the company look weak. Dana stood caught between legacy and loyalty. He respected Jones's greatness but couldn't forget the years of disruption. Behind closed doors, the UFC president was torn. His instincts told him to protect the brand. But deep down, he knew that without Jones, something was missing, that spark, that danger, that sense of unpredictability that made the sport unforgettable. While fans rallied online, Jones continued to train quietly. He never announced a comeback, but footage leaked from private gyms, showing him in shape and focused. It reignited hope that a miracle return might still happen. But Dana held firm. The more the world demanded forgiveness, the more he resisted. It was no longer about contracts or ratings, it was about control. The UFC was his empire, and no fighter, no matter how iconic, would be allowed to challenge his authority again. To understand the collapse between Jon Jones and Dana White, you have to look back more than a decade. Their bond had always been volatile, built on success and shattered by scandal. It started unraveling as early as 2012, when Jones refused to save a pay-per-view event on short notice, leading to the UFC's first-ever cancellation. Dana never forgot that day. Over the years, every comeback was shadowed by controversy. Failed drug tests, arrests, and unpredictable behavior became part of Jones's legend. And each time, Dana defended him, absorbing the backlash, protecting his star, and keeping the machine running. But with every scandal, the foundation weakened. Trust turned into tolerance, and loyalty became obligation. Their partnership was unlike any other in sports. It was emotional, volatile, and deeply personal. Jones was the artist, Dana was the architect. Together they built history, but behind the glory was a growing resentment. Dana wanted discipline, Jones wanted freedom. Neither could exist on the other's terms. By 2025, years of buried tension finally exploded. What looked like a business dispute was the culmination of a decade-long emotional war. They weren't just fighting over money, they were fighting over control, over respect, and over the story of who truly built the UFC. The final fallout wasn't random. It was destiny, the inevitable collapse of two men too powerful to share the same crown. Dana White and Jon Jones had once operated like brothers in arms, one built the empire, the other made it legendary. But power changes everything. As the years went on, their shared ambition turned into a silent rivalry. Dana viewed the UFC as his life's work, a system that no fighter could be bigger than. Jones believed he was the system, that without his talent, there would be no empire.